I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief, the place you come to for your top stories from Israel every Monday to Thursday, brought to you by Lay of the Land. So let's get into it. Let's take a look at those top stories dominating the headlines here in the Holy Land. Now, yesterday we brought you the story of the BBC's list of top anti-Semites. I'll give you a recap. At number 1 was Iran, followed by Hamas at number 2, and coming in at a solid number 3 is the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, the national broadcaster for the United Kingdom. But another organization called StopAntisemitism.org, which monitors anti-Semitism around the world, published at long last the winner of their poll. And the winner is, drumroll for sound effects, Anuradha Mittal. She is the chairperson of the board of Ben & Jerry's, as well as the vice president of the Ben & Jerry's Foundation. She was voted by an overwhelming majority of people who took to the polls to vote in their top anti-Semite of the year. And this is with regards to the boycott of Ben & Jerry's, of the ice cream being sold in what they call the occupied territories, and the ending at the end of 2022 of the manufacturing contract with the Israeli manufacturer. Now, Ben & Jerry's is owned by parent company Unilever, and as of last week, Chicago became the latest U.S. state, joining Texas, Florida, New York, New Jersey in divesting from the holding company, pulling their millions that they have invested in pension funds and retirement annuities out of Unilever. When approached for comment, Anuradha Mittal was not available. Now, she was followed with a close second by pop star Dua Lipa. Dua Lipa, who during the conflagration in May between Israel and Hamas, which saw over 4,000 rockets and projectiles and mortars being fired from the Gaza Strip into Israel, she was going out with Anwar Hadid. Anwar Hadid is the brother of the famed Hadid sisters, Gigi and Bella, supermodels. I mean, you know, you can always count on supermodels and pop stars for your latest expertise on the Middle East. But she really doubled down on her criticism of Israel, the IDF, Jews, and made some pretty harmful and disparaging comments. So she came in a close second, followed by Republican Congresswoman for the state of Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has on numerous occasions compared the pandemic and vaccines to the Holocaust and the Nazi horrors. So we remain curious who else will be compiling lists of top anti-Semites. Meanwhile, very curious, Chinese e-commerce giant AliExpress announced yesterday that they will no longer be serving customers from Palestine or Palestinian customers. Yesterday, any Palestinian who placed orders on AliExpress or the clothing chain Shine received a message that as of the 1st of January 2022, AliExpress will not be delivering or serving Palestinians. So what has resulted, or what has been the issue that has resulted in this decision? Palestinians who place orders with these e-commerce companies often request that the goods they order be sent to Israel. The goods will then be forwarded via the Palestinian Authority postal services to the recipients in the West Bank. Now, yesterday, the Palestinian Authority postal services said they no longer want to handle any goods with Israel in the title. And this is not the first time that we've seen any goods, any services destined for the Palestinians, but have Israel as the middleman or an area in between being refused. We can only go back to last year's vaccine rollout, when the United Arab Emirates sent COVID aid, when Israel wanted to donate vaccines to the Palestinians, it was refused on the grounds that either it landed at Ben Gurion Airport in Israel or that it came from Israel. So now we see a similar situation with orders placed by Palestinians through AliExpress and Shein. And it's very, very sad, because it means that there are many, many Palestinians who will not receive or be able to shop freely because of the political stance of several. Now, we've been following Omicron developments in Israel with a beady eye, and there have been some developments. As of tomorrow, once it's signed into place by Israel's health ministry, anybody who comes into contact and is in quarantine, who has come into contact with carriers of the COVID-19 virus, including the Omicron variant, if they test negative with 2 PCR tests, they will no longer need to isolate. Now, we know that several countries around the world, including South Africa, where the Omicron variant was discovered, are scrapping their quarantine laws. At the moment, our Prime Minister is in quarantine because his daughter tested positive, and this law hasn't come into effect yet. But in a conversation with a media outlet, the Prime Minister was asked, what's going to happen with Omicron, given that it is so contagious. Where does Israel stand? And he said, look, it's highly, highly transmissible, and Israel wants to do everything in our power to avoid having to go to situations of imposing lockdowns, which other countries have imposed. Also, a welcome development is the removal of several countries from the red list notice. These countries include, Germany, Italy, Scandinavian countries such as Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Switzerland, and various others. I do recommend that you check the Israeli Health Ministry guidelines to see if your country is still listed. Still, unfortunately, on the red list are countries like South Africa, the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada, France, and various others. So if you are planning trips to Israel, if you're an Israeli planning to travel, please double check to see if your country is on that list. We are hoping that come next week, as per recommendations from the health ministry, we will lift travel bans. This has not been confirmed yet. As soon as it is voted in and agreed upon and made official, we will notify you right here on the Israel Brief. And our final story is one that has got people concerned, and that is whether or not the US will open a consulate for Palestinians in Jerusalem. Now, Prime Minister Bennett, on this same phone call yesterday and in the Knesset yesterday, albeit behind a very, very protective booth, reiterated that Israel will not allow for the US to open a consulate to serve as a de facto embassy for Palestinians in Jerusalem. He says that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and even though the US would need Israeli permission to do such a thing, there is no way that Israel under his premiership will allow for this to happen. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas responded by saying Jerusalem is not like any other city and is the capital of the state of Palestine, and he implored the US to open a consulate there. Israel's concern is if the US do open up a consulate which will serve as an embassy for Palestinians, this gives them a foothold into Jerusalem, and Jerusalem is a hotly contested area with regards to any negotiations for a future Palestinian state. So we will keep you updated, but these are your top stories making headlines today. Don't forget, you can check out our archive of awesome articles on our website at www.layoftheland.online. Today we have posted to Facebook some observations from an Ola Chadasha, she was at the time, Gabby Kraus. Check it out then. While you're on Facebook, if you haven't already, please give us a like or a follow. Don't forget we have a YouTube channel as well. Our channel is The Israel Brief. And if you are viewing us there, please like us, share our content, and don't forget to subscribe. It really, really helps us get news from Israel out to as many people as possible. And if you aren't interacting or following us on Twitter, you can find us at Lay of the Land 5. That's at Lay of the Land with the digit 5. So with the Tuesday edition of The Israel Brief, I'm Rolene Marks, and we'll check in with each other tomorrow as I bring you those top stories.